Our very first speaker for the day is Mr. Henry Onukwuba, Academic Director, Lagos Business School, HR Academy. You can see we're starting off with the men. So we want you to give us our full support. You give us your full support. Henry is and now I'm reading his profile. Please, can we spotlight him? Great. Let's spotlight his profile. Great. So Henry is a senior fellow and full-time faculty member at the prestigious Lagos Business School, LBS, where he serves as the academic director of the HR Academy. Since joining LBS in 2008, he has held senior roles including Director of Alumni Relations and Executive Education. Previously, he was CEO of Consolidated Business Support System and founded Hibon Consult. A fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, CIPM, Henry chaired the CIPM Education Committee, earning the CIPM Mega Award for Creativity and Innovation. He has published multiple books, case studies, peer-reviewed articles. He's a certified gender equality champion, no wonder he's on our platform, behavioral consultant, and marriage consultant. Please, everyone, let's give a warm virtual round of applause, cheers, reactions to Mr. Henry. Welcome, Mr. Henry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anton. Thank you very much for that.
I hope you're comfortable where you are. Yes, hope you're comfortable where you are.
And,
okay.
Now this is a women conference, and we are starting with a man, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
It shows that we are in it together.
Yes.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening wherever you are. My name is Henry, and I'm going to speak with you with some slides. So I'm going to share my slides. And I need you to confirm that when you see the slides, that you've seen them.
Yes, I can see your slide. And I think other people have confirmed they can see your slide too. So you can proceed.
Okay, so I've been asked to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've given a sub-theme to that, involving women in policy making and supporting women to thrive in the workplace. I have a limited amount of time, so I'll try and see what I can do within that time. Moderator, please take me away from being co-host so that I don't get the waiting room.
Okay. Yes. Technical support, yes. Please help us with that. Thank you.
To distort the flow of the.
So, okay, technical support, please take him out of co-host mode. Thank you.
All right. So this is how we are going to go. We are going to define the terms to be sure that we are all on the same page. We are going to tell you where we are going to, the destination. We are going to look at some facts on women's representation, both in policy making and in the boardroom. And we're also going to look at possible causes of what is happening to the women under representation. And we are going to profile some possible solutions, and then we conclude. If time permits, I might play you one or two videos, but let's see how it goes. Moderators, please take me out from this. Okay, so first it's, I didn't say you should disable me from sharing my screen.
IT, just to take him out as co-host, please let him share his screen, please.
If we remove him from being a co-host, he's not going to be able to share his slide. So that's why.
Okay.
That is the problem, eh? Okay, let's see how
we manage through. Thank you.
Just disable the waiting room so that people can just join freely. Just disable the waiting room.
Yeah, I think that works. Disable the waiting room. All right, so let's start with the term diversity. So the question is, what is diversity? Diversity in the workplace, in this case, refers to the incorporation of people from various origins, viewpoints, abilities, and characteristics into an organization. And we have elements of diversity, and these are all that I've put in bold the three elements that concern us most here: the gender, the marital status, and the parental status. Now, equity is the next term we are looking at. Equity is defined by Oxford Dictionary as the quality of being fair and impartial. Now, equity is fairness and justice, and equity differs considerably from equality. So if you can see this image, now when you talk about equality, this is equality. Everybody gets the same pedestal, but it's different from equity because our strengths are not the same, our capacities are not the same, and we must recognize all of these differences, making sure that everybody has equal opportunity to see what the other person is seeing. That is what equity is. Now let's look at inclusion. Inclusion is equal access to opportunities, positions, and power. If you bring it to the corporate world, it becomes the degree to which an employee is accepted and treated as an insider by others in a work system. So the next question I'll ask is diversity and inclusion the same? Even from the diagrams we see, you can see this is diversity. We have different people all over the place, but this is inclusion, that there is some connectivity going on there. So they are not the same, all right? Benemea said that diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. So you can actually be invited to the party, but nobody wants to dance with you. And somebody puts it even better. It says diversity is about counting heads. Inclusion is about making heads count. So we may have women in the office, but do their heads count? Do their opinions count? Do their voices count? That is where the inclusion will come in. And what's the destination? When you have diversity and you have equity and you have inclusion, you get what is called belonging. And that is when somebody feels part and parcel of the organization, part and parcel of the polity, part and parcel of the system. So that is really where we are heading to. How do we get women to feel belong, in the system? Now, but I must share with you some sad facts. In the area of policy making, only 13 women are heads of government out of 193 member states of the United Nations. Roughly half of all the current women leaders, 7 out of 13, are in Europe. And 9 of these 13 are, for the first time, the women heads of government of their country. So it has not been like this before. Now, less than a third of UN countries have ever had a woman leader. It's a sad reality. In the United States, 147 or 28% approximately out of the 535 members of the 117th US Congress are women. And this is an even increase over the past decade, of over 50%. So it's been worse than this. Okay. So even in the United States, which is the epitome, or supposed to be the epitome of democracy, we are seeing a lot of this discrimination, a lot of inequality. And look at this data. Now, this is the data that tracks the share of women in parliament all over the world, beginning from 1900. Now, if you look at this data, at 1900, a lot of countries never had women in parliament. From 1920, we begin to have some with less than 10%. From 1940, we begin to have 10 to 20% women representation. From 1960, we begin to have 20 to 30% women. And even in 2022, only infinitesimal number have 50% or more women in the parliament. So it's a world, it's an issue that covers the whole world. It affects everybody in the world, not just African issue. But let's come to Africa. We just 6 years before the 2030 deadline for this SDG goals. Many African countries are still very far from achieving women's equal and effective participation in political decision making. Let's take a look. This is percentage women political representation in Africa in 2024. And this is what you see. This is the African figure. Lower house of parliament 26, upper house of parliament 21, the two houses 25, political party leadership only 9%. This is in percentage. Election management body, those that conduct the election, local government speakers, mayors of capital cities, top executive positions, and cabinet members. So you can see all those figures in red where they are less than 25%. You can see 0 in central, 0 in north, 0 in west on political party leadership. If the women are not political party leaders, it means that the way politics is undertaken will be male-centric. You know, because there are certain ways we play politics that make it so difficult for women to be part of it. So this is reality. Now let's come home to Nigeria, where I come from. In Nigeria, we have this so-called 35% affirmative action policy, which says that 35% of all political positions should go to women. But the reality is that only 8 women are ministers in this country out of 45, and out of that 8, actually 1 or 2 have left, while only 9% are federal legislators. None of the 36 state governors of this country is a female governor. Now, the situation is getting worse. From 36 women in 2007, it went to 32 in 2011, and even worse in 2019, 22. So as the political cycle draws close, less and less women get represented. In the last election last year, we have only 8 female senators, representing 7.3%. And we have just 13 female House of Reps members, representing a mere 3.6%. What can it, what impact can these ladies in the National Assembly make? And even the number of women that contest the elections is a problem. So look at this. These are female representation in Nigerian politics. That means those that actually came out to contest the election. 17% for the Senate, 15% for the House of Reps in 2015. In 2019, it went down to 12.3% for the Senate, 11.6% for the House of Reps. And in 2023, it's the worst. In fact, 2023 has been the worst year for women participation in politics in Nigeria. So what is happening? Now, the consequences of this are, this is a severe challenge to democracy, because we have disenfranchised half of the population. Women make up 49.6% of Nigerians. And in Africa, the picture is the same. So women and female gender interests are not fully represented in decision-making process. And this dovetails to the corporate world, where you now have enactment of non-women, that's not women-friendly laws. You know, non-women-friendly laws and corporate policies are enacted because the women are not represented. And let's see what happens in the corporate office. Now, this is labor force participation rate in sub-Saharan Africa. So the women are there in the office. They make up 58.6%. Okay? Now, but in the boardroom, let's see what happens. As of 2023, like Noella said, women hold just 10.4% of leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies. Globally, women hold 23% of executive positions, 29% of senior management positions, 37% of manager positions, 42% of professional positions, and 47% of support staff positions. You notice one thing? As the positions get less, you have more representation. They are there more in the lower cadre than the upper cadre. And it's not a world, I mean, it's a global thing, but Africa has its own peculiarities. And look at Africa. Non-management positions, we have 47% of women, but only 29% in senior management positions. Now, these are some of the sectors with the, the HR sector has a very large representation of women, education, social services, healthcare. But when it comes to mining, construction, real estate, and transportation, you don't find most women there. Now, come to the senior management level. In Africa, only 5% are CEOs. Only 5%. 23% are ESCO members, and 14% are board members. Asia is even worse, 4%. European Union is 3%. Latin America is 2%. US is 5%. So it's a global epidemic. It's a global epidemic. Board membership, you have, 17, 18, 10, 14. This is a global picture. Let's come back to our continent, Africa. By industries, only 20% in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, 19% in financial and professional services, 17% in transport, logistics, and tourism, 17% in consumer goods and retail, 16% in telecoms, 13% in energy and materials, and 10% in manufacturing industries. The women are not there in the boardroom. If you look at my regions, North Africa has the worst record, just 9%. The next worst is West Africa, my country, my region, and then you have East Africa and Southern Africa. So, here's the problem. What are the causes? What are the causes? The first is what I would say it is called you are not good enough. There is implicit bias and stereotypes regarding women's leadership capabilities. Men think women are not good enough. Even women think women are not good enough. You know this lady, one of the best persons that have come out of Africa. She was in politics in Nigeria. She was the controlling minister, Minister of Finance, and coordinating minister. But many people still believe that she was not good enough. We lost her to the WTO. So no matter how fantastic a woman is, there's this feeling that you're not good enough. And so there are cultural nuances. Africa is a patrimonial continent. The men feel that they should be in charge. So there's resistance to change. People are not comfortable with the change. There's fear of disruption of the existing power dynamics. Like I said before, women are held to higher standards than men. If you make a woman a CEO, people expect her to perform magic because she has to prove that she has to be there. She merits to be there. But a man will be, excused if he makes mistakes, but a woman will not be excused. Then there's challenge of work-life balance, managing the home and managing the office, managing the political arena and all that. Political party meetings happen in the midnight. How many women can attend those meetings? Then there are lack of supportive workplace policies, such as flexible working arrangements and maternity leave. And then women are actually their worst enemies sometimes. It is easier for a woman to report a man than for a woman to report a woman. I don't have any empirical evidence, but it's something that we have all seen happen in organizations. Finally, there's what is called unconscious bias, and that's where I would like to play a video. I hope you hear the sound.
Take a look at this image. How many triangles do you see? 2, 6, maybe even 8? Ready for the answer? Well, actually, it's 0. There are no triangles. On average, our brains are working hard to try and process 11 million pieces of information every second. In reality, they consciously only capture about 50 pieces per second and actually process just 7, meaning we're constantly taking shortcuts to fill in the blanks. Unconscious bias is an example of a shortcut our brain takes to make snap judgments about people before we even realise we've done so. Everyone has deep subconscious preferences for people with similar characteristics to ourselves. Things like our own background, personal experiences, societal stereotypes, and cultural context all influence the perception we have of another person before we even get to know them. These biases can actually have harmful effects. They can prevent organisations from achieving diversity, as well as create barriers in people's careers. For example, research done by ActionAid and Care International found that female surge staff, that's the staff deployed in an emergency humanitarian response, felt agencies automatically turn to males to take up leadership positions, even if they're less qualified than their female counterparts. So, how can you tackle the influence of unconscious bias? Step 1. Become aware. There are dozens of different types of bias. Let's take a look at 3 common ones. Like me bias is when you have bias towards someone who looks like you or has a similar background as you. Confirmation bias is when we only listen to information that confirms our preconceptions. And anchor bias is when your mind anchors to the first piece of information that you were given about a subject. Anchor bias can particularly affect salary negotiations, and one example of this in the global development sector is the USAID biodata form.
Essentially, you have to write down your salary history for the last 3 years. And so if you are sending your biodata to a recruiter, the moment they open it and they look at your salary history, it's essentially them anchoring to that information. And from kind of that point on, regardless of if it's a much higher position, if it's a much riskier position, if it's a much more technical position, it almost doesn't matter because the recruiter's mind has anchored to this information that you've provided to them.
Becoming aware of your unconscious bias can often be the hardest step. The first thing to do is look back at when you've made decisions at work that might have been influenced by your unconscious bias. Think about the particular situation you were in when you made the decision and how the decision making could be improved if you were more aware of your bias. Step 2. Find your trigger. Write a list of situations when you are most likely to experience these unconscious biases. Is it in meetings or before a particularly tough decision? Does it happen over email or when you talk to a specific group or person? Maybe it's when you're in certain moods, like when you're hungry, stressed, or tired. Step 3. Slow down. Next time you notice a trigger, try giving yourself a minute to pause and consider your response before instantly reacting.
So a great way to turn off that older part of your brain that makes these automatic snap judgments is simply to take 3 deep breaths. And you want to take, full breaths. So breathe in, then breathe out, and then count. And that helps you to calm down and turn off that fight or flight part of your brain and get back to the more normal part of your brain that can make a more rational decision.
Step 4. Do one small thing differently. You could ask a different person to kick off each meeting, or, after a meeting, ask for feedback from someone who wasn't vocal and seriously consider their opinion. Once you've implemented this action, take note and give yourself some deserved recognition for tackling your unconscious bias. Research shows that positive emotions help to cement things as habits.
We are all very guilty of unconscious bias, and I'm going to start the solution from there. The first thing we need to do is eliminate unconscious bias. It's not going to be easy to eliminate unconscious because it's unconscious. There is this like me bias. You are biased towards somebody that looks like you. So a man who is at the top will most likely have an unconscious bias towards a fellow man. There are positions open, a man and a male and a female are vying for the same position. Your conscious bias is to link to the man. There's a confirmation bias, something that you already, believe in and you are looking for something to confirm that, there is the anchor bias, that is the bandwagon bias. So find the trigger. What triggers that bias? You know, take a deep breath, take some steps back, and then try and do one small thing differently. Like in the video, you can ask somebody to maybe take charge of the meeting, and then you watch. You know, so let's be aware of that unconscious bias and then try to solve it. The second thing is the affirmative action. Now, I've said this, many African countries are far from achieving the SDG goal on goal number 5, which is gender equality. We are very far from achieving this. So there are some organizations that have done something, are doing something, but it's not enough. We need to do more. Then for organizations, you need to develop what we call the DEIB action plan. You can't wish away the problem of non-inclusion, non-inclusivity, or the discrimination and all that. You have to legislate it. You have to, get a policy around it. So some of the policies, DIB action plan should talk about attraction and talent outreach, recruitment and onboarding, training and development, talent and leadership development, coaching and mentoring, performance management, compensation and benefits, inclusive work policies, flexible work policies, employee engagement, even separation and retirement. There must be policies around how we do this in our organization. It must be very, intentional. And then finally is the support. The most noticeable difference between inclusion and diversity is that diversity can be mandated. You can say, let us get people from all over the world, all over all the races. While inclusion will only come from voluntary action of management, voluntary action of leadership. There must be political willpower to make this inclusion succeed. Now, I will have to conclude because I was given 20 minutes for this talk. Diversity and inclusion without equity is like baking a cake without a recipe. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice heard. So what we need is one love. And I'd like to end this presentation by inviting you to listen to this music.
All day to this
All right,
music.
thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I hope you enjoyed
it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think they said when somebody, delivers excellently, we say the person spoke facts. So you give us facts with a lot of empirical studies. And as I was seeing the data, I was like, ooh, I knew it was bad, but we didn't know it's this bad. And that has been giving us more perspective and shown us and everyone connecting to say we need to do something. And you have there's a Q&A for you, 2 questions. And just let me ask the first question. So collectively, women groups and organizations have championed policy that favor women's career. However, there are some organizations that have not done much in this direction. How do we ensure through advocacy and policy making, women are given the opportunity to progress once they qualify, regardless their peculiar issues, such as, of course, childbirth, family, or just being a general caretaker?
Yeah, so it's a good thing that a man is starting this conference because you can't talk about women equality without having men as part of the discussion. So there's what we call men engage. The women need to engage the men. The men must be there to support whatever equality discussion is happening in the office or in the political arena. I know of 2 Nigerian ladies that formed an NGO called Elect Her. And that NGO's, the whole purpose of that NGO is to get more women into the political arena. They formed that NGO in 2019. Unfortunately, despite all their efforts, like I said, I shared in my slides, 2023 has been the worst year for women participation in Nigerian politics. So perhaps they needed men to support whatever they are doing. Because we have seen that there is no Nigerian political party that has a lady as a chairman or a chairperson. So even the way the office, the politics is run in Nigeria is all male-centric. So it has to be a collective effort. You know, the women must understand that they can't get this, I mean, they can't get very far on this journey without the men. And we, the men, have to be ready to support whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, I didn't share with you the business case for inclusion. Because it has been proven that actually, I'm a man, but I have to say it, women are better leaders. You know, and where you have the men at the, where you have the women at the top in the boardroom, in the majority, the organizations actually do better. So it is for the good of everybody that we support what the women are doing. And those who have come out to do it, the men have to support what they are doing for the good of the whole organization and the whole nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I think everybody is still shocked with the data that you delivered because people are asking why, how, and it just tells us that we have so much work to do. But obviously, the men need to champion this as much as we are advocating. The men are signing up to say not just on paper but in action. So thank you, Mr. Henry. Thank you so much.
Let me give an example. Last year, last 2 years, there are some female laws in the National Assembly. They were tabled. That was last year or last 2 years. All of them were thrown out last 2 years before this present legislature. All of them were thrown out. Why couldn't they be thrown out? Because there is no woman to push those things in the assembly. So the men in the assembly, you know, have to believe in those policies for them to be passed. So that's why I said women need to have men by their side in this advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Thank you so much. One thing I took away from here is diversity is getting invited to the party. Inclusion is getting asked to dance. And me, I'm going to ask also to eat the money. Eat as much as you want, how you want, and whatever satisfies you. So I'll add food to it because we need to be all around. So thank you, Mr. Henry, for this very, very insightful presentation. We have to move very quickly to the next speaker, and we appreciate your time. Thank you, and your knowledge and your expertise. Thank you. We take,
my pleasure.
don't take it for granted. So